All right, well, okay, let's get going. We've got a lot to get through, so we stay on time. My name is Mike Ibba. I'm the Dean of Schmidt College of Science and Technology, and it's my great privilege to welcome you to the Schmidt Senior Research Conference. This is quite meaningful. I know that was said, I'll explain why I'm saying this. This is quite meaningful for me. This was the first event I ever attended at Chapman after I got the job and before I actually arrived, and I did this on Zoom. And I remember Jason Keller, who is a friend of mine who I now don't trust, who told me this would be in person when we did this in 2021. Here we are, still online a year later. I'm a microbiologist, so I guess you can blame me. I believed him. I said we'll be doing this in the fall live. So we will be doing this in the fall live, in the fall of 2021. So first of all, thank you all for coming. I want to congratulate all of our students, not just for making it through a year like no other, but also for still being as incredibly successful as ever. I think that please don't think that our students are in any way compromised by going through this. They've found different ways to excel, which to me is just an incredible testament to the students, to the faculty, to the staff, and everyone at Chapman. So today we're going to hear about some great research from some amazing scientific researchers. I don't want you to think of them as students, just think of them as scientific researchers. Judge them like that, look at them, and you'll be suitably impressed. Their strength, resilience, and ingenuity I find quite inspiring. And if you want to look for things to make you feel good about the future and what's going to happen as the pandemic starts to ease, look at these students and what they've been able to achieve when challenged. That's what we always say higher education is supposed to be about. It's teaching you to be resilient, reactive, ingenious, and ready for whatever comes next. I think our students have resoundingly shown that, as you'll see today when they give their presentations. So the first person we're going to hear from today is one of our junior faculty, Allegra Liberman-Martin. And I think that what Allegra has been able to do during the pandemic and as an assistant professor here is a testament to Chapman and to Schmidt. So Allegra got her BA in chemistry from Scripps College in Claremont. She did her PhD at UC Berkeley in chemistry. She then was a successful postdoc at Caltech before coming to Chapman. So Allegra has successfully set up her group. Despite the pandemic, she's got research grants, she's training a lot of students, she's generating data, she's doing incredibly well. But what's remarkable is that at the same time, she's adapted also to the pandemic, and I have the privilege of reading her annual reviews and seeing what she's been doing with teaching. And despite the challenges of trying to run a lab during the pandemic, and believe me, it's not a trivial thing to do, her and Dr. Ibba managed to publish a paper about how to teach organic chemistry in a virtual environment during the pandemic. And this is not just a paper. When you read the comments from the students, they're incredible. And these are not just students trying to get a good grade by saying nice things about their professors. I've recently seen exit interviews that another college brought to me and showed me how Dr. Liberman-Martin and Dr. Ibba were called out by students for making an exceptional experience for them. So before I embarrass Allegra anymore, and Maduka's glad he's not being embarrassed and having to talk afterwards, I just wanted to thank you for everything you've done, Allegra. It's been incredible to see how you've just found a way to thrive despite all the challenges thrown at you. So I'll turn it over to you. Normally at this point I would introduce the title of your talk, but no one actually sent it to me, so I guess you're going to talk about life or chemistry. I'm not sure.
Yes, yes, very good guess. Okay, let me get my screen share started. Let's see. Okay, can you see some slides? Okay, wonderful. Thank you for the nod. Okay, let me just get As usual, when I teach as well, I have to get everything resituated once I'm screen sharing. So let's see. All right. So I'm really excited to be able to speak to you today and to say a really warm welcome to all of our Schmid seniors that are here today, as well as family and friends of the Schmid community. And as a professor in Schmid, I really do mean it when I say that today's event is one of our favorites of the year, a real chance to celebrate the research accomplishments of our students. Let me hold on. Okay, so getting used to my screen share with this new feature I'm using. So a huge congratulations to our seniors. It is such a big accomplishment to make it to this stage in your undergraduate studies. And this year especially has been incredibly challenging. Students had to navigate so many COVID-19 pandemic issues during this year. For those performing research on campus or field work, they had strict physical distancing measures in place. Others conducted their research entirely remotely, only meeting over Zoom with their mentors or group members. And so these circumstances were especially challenging. But congratulations again, you did it. And today's event marks a really important point in your scientific journey, an opportunity to reflect on the research you've done and share your work with others. When I was preparing to speak at today's event, I spent some time reflecting on my own undergraduate research journey and thinking about how undergraduate research influenced my life and career. I started college as a philosophy major, possibly on the pre-medical track. When I was a sophomore, I was taking organic chemistry and loved it so much that I decided to switch my major to chemistry, although I was still leaning towards pursuing a career in medicine. Midway through my sophomore year, I happened to attend a chemistry major's dinner at a professor's house, and I spoke to my former general chemistry professor there, the person I had my very first college course in chemistry. My professor mentioned offhand that she performed atmospheric chemistry research, and I had signed up to join her research group by the end of that dinner. Not really knowing anything about it, just because I liked her and thought it would be cool to try some research. Throughout my junior year of college, I immersed myself in doing atmospheric chemistry research. I found that I really enjoyed the research process and found that I was drawn to pursuing a PhD in chemistry after graduation. There was another twist in my undergraduate research journey, however, which was that I learned that my atmospheric chemistry research mentor would be going on sabbatical during my senior year, so I would need a new project for my capstone experience. I decided to switch research fields, join an inorganic chemistry research group, and conduct my capstone experience in this new research field. I learned a lot of lessons from performing undergraduate research, and a big one that came up in every research project, as well as after that, is that research is a lot less glamorous than I had initially imagined. So with the atmospheric chemistry project, I was really attracted to the big picture idea, which was understanding the types of amine pollutants in Southern California air samples and quantifying them as well. Once I got in the lab, however, I found that my day-to-day work did not resemble anything having to do with large environmental causes. I spent a whole summer and several months of a year figuring out how to repair broken equipment. So here I've included, I know it's sort of low resolution, but cell phone cameras weren't as good back in like 2008. So this is the best that I have from these picture days. And this was an ion chromatography system that was delicate and complicated. There are lots of different tubes for the liquids going back and forth. Even when the instrument was working, it was tedious work. Each sample needed to be manually injected, and each experiment took an hour. So I would be running around for a few minutes to start a sample and then have nothing to do for the next hour. The worst part of all was trying to analyze my data using some code that was poorly documented, written by a student that graduated 5 years earlier. But even in spite of all of these boring and frustrating aspects, I actually really enjoyed the research. There's a sort of similar story when I switched to inorganic chemistry research. I was again attracted to the big picture idea of my project, which was figuring out how a platinum compound could mediate carbon-carbon bond formation, bonds that are ubiquitous in organic compounds. But once I got going, research was slow, and like before, everything went wrong. Every piece of equipment I worked with, whether it was made out of glass or metal or a giant magnet, broke at some point during the senior year. The synthesis of my compounds was unexpectedly complicated, and I spent hours in this glove box, this piece of equipment to protect compounds from air, manually filtering them by hand. Even with those precautions, using this glove box, everything was irreproducible. One day I could prepare my compounds in 90% yield, and then the next day I would be lucky to get 30%. And yet I was totally hooked and really wanted to spend my time in graduate school doing inorganic chemistry research as well. Like all of you at Chapman, I had a culminating research experience called a senior thesis at my college. I gave a poster presentation, a research seminar, and wrote a thesis report. Here are a couple of pictures of me that I found from those days. As you get older, you're less likely to be embarrassed, so I'm just going for it. So here's me in front of my senior poster and me carrying my printed copies of my thesis report. And so despite the smile on my face, I found these events extremely stressful. So I spent hours practicing, preparing, and yet I was so nervous. And I'm sure many of you are nervous here today as well. So keep in mind, we are excited to hear your work and we are here to support you. And today is to celebrate your work, not scare you, even though it may feel intimidating right now. So what have I learned? I know I'm running a bit over on time, so I'm going to try to not fall too far behind schedule. Sorry, everybody. So what have I learned after my years of research? So I originally thought that the scientific method started with a brilliant idea. Then you sort of did a bunch of planning with a lot of forethought in the beginning, going into designing a hypothesis and your experiments. And then after all of that hard work, you carried out the research, analyzed your data, and extracted key findings. At least for me and my field of research, the actual research process does not resemble this at all. What I do as a synthetic chemist is I spend a lot of time reading and trying to look for certain types of molecules that I think are cool. Usually these are ones that are somewhat unstable, but I'm really not very scientific in how I go about which articles I read or which molecules I find interesting. Once we find a molecule that's of interest, we try to make it, and assuming we can make it, we start reacting it with everything we have lying around the lab. Like no hypothesis, just mixing different chemicals together and seeing what happens. And usually, probably 90% of the time, with my personal track record, nothing will work. Eventually, something will work. It always does. And once we have a promising result, we will explore a lot of variations, and at the end, try to formulate a hypothesis and then have a really narrow test for that hypothesis. We try to convince people that we had this hypothesis all along, and they may or may not believe us. I don't believe people in my research field if they say they have a really good hypothesis from the beginning. It just doesn't happen that way very often. So if research is so messy and frustrating, why do it at all at any career stage, but especially as an undergraduate? I really think that research is a wonderful opportunity for both technical skills as well as developing in your career. So performing research gives you an opportunity to become one of the world's experts in your really, really narrow field of inquiry. Even if you're just getting started, you really can push forward the frontiers of scientific knowledge. Even more importantly, though, I think it really does help you to clarify your own interests. Professors are always excited when students discover that they love research and want to become professors themselves. But learning that you hate research is a valid takeaway from this whole process, and that even more so can help you to narrow down your directions to take in your career. Know that all motivations for performing research are valid, no matter what they are. Some people are drawn to research to benefit society or the environment or human health. Others of us, like myself, just find research fun and maybe even a little bit addictive. So whether you've discovered a love or a hatred of research this year or something in between, I'm glad that we in Schmid were able to be a part of your undergraduate journey. I'm proud to count all of you as members of my scientific community, and I am so excited to hear about your results and personal journeys through undergraduate research today. So congratulations again, and thank you for the opportunity to open the conference this morning. And now I'm going to hand things off to Chris Kim, who will be introducing our next keynote speaker. Thank you again.
Thanks, Allegra. That was awesome. Hi, everyone. Good morning. My name is Chris Kim, as Allegra said. I'm Associate Dean of Academic Programs in the Schmid College of Science and Technology, and it's my distinct pleasure this morning to introduce our next keynote speaker and our dean. Dean Mike Ibba has come to us most recently from Ohio State University, where he had a number of roles in addition to being a professor in the Department of Microbiology. He also directed the Biochemistry Graduate Program, co-directed the NIH Cellular, Molecular, and Biochemical Sciences Training Program, was the chair of the Department of Microbiology, as well as associate director of the Infectious Diseases Institute, all at Ohio State. But you can tell from, within 5 seconds of him speaking, he's not from Ohio natively. He got his bachelor's degree at Imperial College of London, his PhD at the University of Manchester, and then had a series of research positions in places including the Swiss Federal Institute of Technology, University of Copenhagen in Denmark, Yale University, and all of those kind of contributed in many ways to his path to us as the Dean of Schmid. And that, if my calculations are right, Mike has been here for just a little over 9 months, and he has likely communicated with most of us through screens, like the ones we're all looking through now. I can't imagine what it's like to come to an institution mid-pandemic, but more than just keeping our college on track and moving us forward through this period, he's also really infused a lot of energy and a lot of his own interests and priorities to our college, which I think are quite welcome, speaking on behalf certainly of our faculty. Those include topics such as diversity, equity, and inclusion, faculty recruitment, structured mentorship of students, faculty, and staff, and importantly for today, research opportunities for students. Some of you may be aware that we were able to provide through the college research opportunities, funded research opportunities for many students this summer. And a lot of that was the result of Dean Ibba's efforts to really provide that for students who had clearly requested and are clearly going to benefit from it. His own research involves the translation of the genetic code and corresponding influences on a wide range of processes, including protein synthesis, antibiotic resistance, cellular health and disease, and so forth. So without any further ado, I'll turn things over to him with one shout out for the slide here to congratulate our senior award winners and nominees. And congratulations to all the Schmid seniors, as you can see from my sign above. We're all really proud of you, and I'll turn things over to Mike from here. Thanks.
All right, thanks, Chris. So yeah, I wanted to start by congratulating all our Schmid College of Science and Technology winners. This just speaks to what an incredible group they are. I've been lucky enough to meet some of these through SSLC and in other settings, and I just find the students that I encountered just incredibly impressive. So I know I made the right decision to come here. So before I start, Chris mentioned what it must be like to come to somewhere during a pandemic. So my research, a lot of what we do is understanding how systems respond to stress. So a lot of the way you can find out how a system functions is seeing what happens when you challenge it with stress. And I've done a comparative study between my previous institution and my current institution, and I know that this institution is a better stress responder and has a clearer, less random response than my previous institution. So I think I made the right decision. So, oh, if I could only advance my slides, this would all be better, wouldn't it? Okay. So, I was asked for a title for my talk, and as Chris mentioned, I work on translation, and I've been generous calling it a quarter of a century lost in translation. I realize it's far more than that now. And the reason I say this is because I've taken a very, I would say, what Allegra said really resonated with me. I didn't have a big plan. I just kept on coming back for the research that kept on spiking my interest and redirecting me in a semi-random way. So part of my lab works on evolution, and this is technically called a random walk. So I'm defending it as a scientifically known process that I've been pursuing through my academic career. So as Chris mentioned, I spent nearly 20 years at Ohio State, where I had done a whole range of things. If you think this means I had trouble saying no, you're correct, but I shouldn't tell you that because I do struggle to say no to things. So the question is, how did I get here? So if you don't know who Bill Murray is, go and look him up on Netflix. Your life will be better by Monday if you do that. He made a film called Lost in Translation a few years ago. And there was a phase that my field went through, because academics are not very inspiring outside of science sometimes. We all called our talks Lost in Translation. We had this picture from Bill Murray's movie, and we all superimposed our faces on Bill Murray's, and that's how we started our talk. So I decided not to torture you with that. But I do like his puzzled expression, because it does make me think I should tell you how I got here. Dr. Schwartz said, why don't you just tell people what you did, Mike? Well, I'll be honest how this worked. So when I started, in the UK, you can go straight to medical school. So this makes it easy. You can pre-pick your career. You think, great, I'll go to medical school. I can do that. Your parents are happy. Your friends think you're smart. The only problem is I didn't get into medical school. And then I was sort of challenged with this notion that I could take a year off, prepare better for the British equivalent of the MCATs, and go back. But then a school teacher said to me, why would you do that? The only thing you seem to enjoy is biology lab and chemistry lab, so why don't you just go and become a biochemist? And I was like, okay, why not? That was literally the whole decision-making process. So then I went to Imperial College, and I did. This is not a picture of me. Unlike Allegra, the pictures of me I've got to save for special occasions. They're much, much older, and they'll convince you I once had hair. So I went to Imperial College. I loved undergraduate research. I got a paper published, and I thought, great, this is easy. I'll just stay here. I'll do a master's, then a PhD, and I don't have to make any decisions. And part of the reason for that was not, I loved the science, but I'm from London, as Chris pointed out to you. You can tell from my accent, I'm not from around here. People from London, people from big cities have a very, very narrow view of the world. So our view of the world is that most of the world consists of London. There are some other places that we've heard about, but as you can see, they're off in the distance. So I thought I should just stay here, do research, stay in London. But then I was very fortunate to have a mentor who said to me, Dr. Mantle, he said, why would you do that? Why don't you go and learn something? He said, if I keep you here, I trained you already. Neither of us are going to benefit very much. I felt a little disheartened because it meant that I should do something else. But also I thought, well, maybe he's right. So then I thought, okay, I'll be a little bit adventurous then. I'll go to Manchester for graduate school. Now, the scale of things in Britain and in Europe is very different from the US. To me, this was a huge step to go 200 miles north to go to graduate school. I thought, okay, I'll do that. And then my parents were like, are you going to get a real job? What are you going to do? I was like, sure, I'll get a real job and I'll move to Europe. So then I moved to Switzerland for a real job, which my parents found very reassuring. I worked in pharma for Novartis doing production work on recombinant proteins. The thing was, my parents were happy, but I got really bored really quickly because I realized that working in a company of that type in production just wasn't for me. I wasn't cut out for it. So then I wrote a lot of letters to people in Switzerland, and someone took me on at the Swiss Federal Institute of Technology, and I did a postdoc. So I did a postdoc there, and I thought, well, I like this. Switzerland's a good place to do science. It's well funded. I could stay here. And then something happened, and this was my kind of moment. I was introduced to transfer RNA. Now, this is where, if this happens to you as a scientist, you're fortunate. I've worked on this the rest of my career. I find this molecule fascinating. It's what defines the genetic code. It does all sorts of different things. And it sort of then defined what I wanted to do, because then I thought, well, I need to go to a big lab to do that. So I thought, why don't I do another postdoc? Now my parents are despairing at this point because I'd had a real job a few steps back, and they're like, really? You're going to go and do a postdoc on a 3-year visa? I said, well, I could get 4 years. That didn't really reassure them. So I went to do a postdoc, and I loved it. I had the time of my life doing this. A great group of people. It never felt like work. It was an incredible time. And it was one of those things, I was in the right place at the right time, just when genomes were being sequenced, and as biochemists, we were trying to figure out what all these new proteins were doing. It was a lot of fun. Then I thought, okay, America's been great. I'll go back to Europe. And I was offered a job in Denmark. So I went there, and I'd heard great quality of life in Denmark. If you've ever read these articles about how they're the happiest people, the most satisfied people, well, unfortunately, I wasn't one of those happy, satisfied people living in Denmark. And on my way out the door, I wrote a letter to Nature that Nature published, where I pointed out that Denmark didn't really have a good scientific basic science policy at that time. I think this was me making sure they wouldn't invite me back, but that kind of worked out. So then I decided to get a real job. So then I moved to Ohio State, which was very, very good to me, and I had a great time there. It was really a very complete experience as an academic. I got to do research, I got to teach, I got to be involved in different things, and I never felt like I was going to work. But I got to a point where I was just doing the same thing all the time. And then I moved to California last year for the real job I always wanted. And at Chapman, I've been able to keep my research going. We got our first Chapman paper accepted last week. I voluntarily am teaching, which speaks volumes for the environment here. And I really love the people I get to work with. Even though I haven't met many of them in person, it's been an incredible experience. So the question becomes, and Allegra mentioned this a bit, why do you do this? So there is, of course, the scientific aspect, and people look at very coldly at this, or why do you do what you do? Because you publish. Well, I like publishing. I've been quite successful at it, but it's not really why I do it. And I think what was lucky for me was I realized a few years ago that what I get more out of this than anything else is getting to work with people, getting to do science with people who have become lifelong friends, that I enjoy interacting with. This is why I do it. This is a great group of people. And I realized somewhere along the way that the biggest difference I'll ever make is in terms of the people I train, not in terms of the science I do. And that to me makes Chapman the ideal place for me to be right now. So what do I actually do? So I work currently on looking at antibiotic resistance, and we're looking at how translational triggers switch different decisions in populations when they're challenged with antibiotics. And I won't go into the detail of this, but one of the goals, for example, in a project we have is to find out if we stop cells going into a semi-dormant state, can we prevent these different steps which give rise to rapid occurrence of antibiotic resistance. And that's some of the work that's going on in the lab in Hashinger right now. So what's really impressed me, and I have to be honest, I'm not just saying this to be nice, is that I've been able to get much more out of the undergraduate experience here than I did at Ohio State. At Ohio State, students would come to my lab, we would do some research. It would be really like mini PhD students or mini master's students. But I taught a capstone class about antibiotic resistance. I've been doing capstone literature reviews with Caitlin and Karis this past year. And what I've learned from both of them is that there's another way to look at how we do some of our work. So for example, there's this idea that you can start to predict where antibiotic resistance will come from by using machine learning and analysis of microbiomes. And to me, this is something I hadn't thought about, but I've got to work with students who've kind of piqued my curiosity. So that's where I'm going to end. Thank you all for letting me come here. I'm having the time of my life. I'm really, really enjoying this. And I just know it's going to get better when more people come back. So I'll end there and I'll pass it back to Dr. Schwartz.
Thank you so much. It is my great pleasure to welcome all of you as well this is our 6th annual Schmid College Senior Research Conference. It was formerly known as our Program Honors and Capstone Conference, and this year we have expanded it to encompass all of our seniors and those that would like to present their findings at our conference. I'd like to thank Dean Ibba and Professor Liberman-Martin for sharing your personal journeys today. Students, mark this moment. You too will be reflecting back on today as a significant milestone in your journey as developing scientists. On behalf of everyone participating in this conference, I would like to take the opportunity to give special thanks to Rebecca Green, Sarah Buckley, Sarah Carranza, and our student workers, Ann Schmidt and Leah Reddy, for making this conference happen and for your enthusiasm making this event so memorable for all of us. Students, Ms. Green has created a beautiful conference program for you, which will be sent to you once the presentation recording links are added. So thank you to those very special individuals. I'd also like to take the opportunity to thank our faculty today that are in attendance and our faculty research mentors for devoting your time and intellectual energy to helping our students from coursework through research and culminating to reach this day. And honored guests, I'd like to thank you for joining us today. I know you will be duly impressed by our outstanding students and the work that they have accomplished. We're delighted that there are so many parents in attendance, and it is our great pleasure to tell you personally how absolutely awesome your students are. So in a few minutes, session 1 student presenters and moderators will go to their breakout rooms, but first a few conference logistics. Okay, so the speaker schedule as well as the presentation abstracts can be found on the conference website, which I'm putting the link in the chat in case you're not aware. There you'll find the breakout room numbers as well. So for those that are familiar with the Zoom Speak, Zoom version 5.3 or higher, you'll be able to freely go in and out of breakout rooms without assistance. But if you haven't updated your Zoom version, not to worry. We will work as quickly as possible to move you into your desired room. Unfortunately, that's a manual process, so please be patient. And if at any time during the conference you need assistance, just venture back to this exact same room, which is our plenary room. Our faculty moderators will be recording the presentations in each breakout room. Moderators, please keep your presentations to 12 to 13 minutes with about 4 to 5 minutes for questions. This will allow a few minutes to switch between presentations if necessary. So at the breaks, we have 2 breaks scheduled, and these are very special moments. So at the 11 o'clock break and at the end of the entire conference, we'd like to ask everybody to come back into this plenary room. This is our opportunity to do meet and greet. And it's also to give opportunities for students to introduce their family members to their faculty members and just have a moment to celebrate together. Faculty reviewers, in case you haven't found where the evaluation rubric survey links are, they can be found at the bottom of the home page on the conference website. So students and faculty explore the presentations not only from your discipline, but venture outside of your discipline. Also, from the standpoint of conference etiquette, I would like to request that you remain until the end of the conference. We would really like to have a full audience for those students presenting at the end of the conference. And now students, I've called you students up until now, but really what I'd like to say is colleagues. So colleagues, Frederick Curie said the experiment should be set up to open as many windows as possible on the unforeseen. We are most enthusiastic to hear about the windows that you have opened through your research today. Don't be nervous. We're all your friends. We're here to lift you up. Know that you inspire us, and we are so, so very proud of you. So stay loose, keep calm, and everyone enjoy the conference. So at this point, we're just about on time, so we're going to ask everybody to head to their breakout rooms. Thank you so much.